Hi, and welcome to the next in our series of d20 plus rules and explanations that go along with our Creatures from Fairy Tales and Myth Kickstarter, which is on right now. So here what you see in front of you is the stat block for one of the monsters called the Lingormir, which is a monster that resembles a dragon but is flightless. And so it's more like a wyrm. Now, we eschew the regular stat block that you find in OGL d20 systems, simply because the way we want to create these monsters and make sure that they're always a surprise for veteran players is to give them 5 tiers of power. And 5 tiers of power means when a player group ends up encountering this creature, they have no idea what power level they're facing. So it's no longer, hey, it's a goblin, I know exactly what the stats are. Or, oh, it's an ancient blue dragon, I know exactly what I'm going to expect. So each one of these tiers, depending on which one you choose, that would be the one that you're looking at. So let's say you're doing a tier 3, you can ignore everything on the other column. You can ignore everything in the other columns. If you are playing a tier 3. If you're playing a tier 3, everything under social actions will go all the way to tier 3. When you look at your skills, you'd have all the skills up to tier 3, and the treasure would also end up scaling on your tier. Physical actions and legendary actions would also go to tier 3, so you'd be able to look at everything in terms of cumulative effects. And same thing with lair actions. You'd have everything from tier 1 to tier 3 and just ignore the 4 and 5. So that's the basic overall layout of the sheet. The other alternatives we looked at were to create just atomic stat blocks of every single one of these tiers. And the problem is, if we don't want the players to flip back and forth between different tiers to get what are the earlier tier powers, then the book is going to be unnecessarily long with a lot of cut and paste and duplicated content. The alternative was to allow the player to flip back and forth in terms of saving the amount of pages. But the issue then is it's just ergonomics. It's poor usability. So what we found is, deviating from the standard stat block and creating something that's custom to try and really achieve maximum ergonomics for what we want the DM to have at their fingertips is this. Now, obviously, if we get some good feedback from players in terms of how we can optimize, we're all ears. So now let's take a look at some of the other sections on this sheet. So you'll notice that the alignment is listed up here, but we don't call it alignment. We call it characteristics, because Creatures from Fairy Tale and Myth are meant to be boss monsters. And boss monsters have a life path. They have egos, they have ambitions, they have fears, they have vices. And all of these are actually built out from the standard 5e, life path system that's there, but it's really light compared to other RPGs. So you'd have some information about what the Lingormir's, personality would be, what their flaws would be, their bonds. Ideally, I think we're going to make this a little bit more in-depth than what's presented in the player's handbook, because Creatures from Fairy Tale and Myth should definitely feel like a living, breathing creature with its own motivations and ambitions. So one of the things that comes into the social mechanics are understanding what these characteristics are, because there are 3 types of so without going into the social mechanics too much in this video, which we'll reserve for another video, I'll just say that for social mechanics, it's very important for players to try and understand this, because when they do their social actions, they will get benefits to try and achieve the ultimate social outcome with that creature. So now you've got your standard sections down here: saving throws, vulnerabilities, resistances, immunities. And there's a new thing called secrets and weaknesses. And that's because Creatures from Fairy Tale and Myth, one of the things that you find heroes in these stories is they come into a town where the town said, hey, we've thrown our most talented and powerful warriors against this creature and they can't win. And so we want the players to be able to recreate these encounters, and that means understanding the vulnerabilities of these creatures, because these creatures will have, let's say 20 extra armor class until the heroes, through a little bit of sleuth work, figure out exactly how to whittle that down. And so that's that goal over here. Then we've got tiers of skills. So the higher tiered creatures will have proficiency in more skills. And then we're going back to like first ed AD&D in terms of the treasure table. So this is good for the old grognards that are watching this video. Because I just have amazing memories of us going through these treasure tables in 1E and just coming up with the coolest stuff. So that's what we're going to end up doing for these creatures as well, is the treasure hoards that they're going to oversee, the items that they're going to have available to them are going to be something very colorful and interesting. So let's look at physical actions and legendary actions. So every creature is going to have its base attack, and we don't want to overdo it by having a ton of base attacks, because just rolling to hit, rolling for damage is kind of droll. So what we're looking at is creating the rest of the repertoire of powers to be something a lot more interesting. So regeneration will bring back damage dice, and you can see one of our previous videos for that. And what we offer is, if you don't want to use some of the suggestions for the D20 Plus system, where we have some little innovations factored in, is there's a legacy. So you can actually just regenerate 4 hit points per round. Same thing with all of these effects that actually burn damage dice for really cool powers. We've got a legacy effect, which is, these powers start already used and they recharge on certain die rolls at the start of every round. So that's the way that works. And then layers, same thing. The creatures are going to have a layer action, which is going to have its own initiative tile, and that's going to keep things really, really fresh and interesting. So this is kind of the very quick overview of the monster stat block. And stay tuned for the next video. We're really getting into social actions and how social combat works, because we want players to be able to really recreate a fairy tale encounter and not feel like, roll for initiative and just a slog to the end like you would do with trash mobs. Anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.